episodes. But what else you guys been watching and or doing this year? Or what feels like a year, but a week?
Yeah, watching She-Hulk felt like a week. No, I think this was my favorite episode so far.
Yeah, I think so.
It actually wasn't as bad as a lot of them.
Yeah, at some point watching this episode, I felt like, I think I'm starting to like this show a little.
I'm not ready to go that far, but it was
an
better.
improvement. Yeah.
I watched a show called Reboot. It's on Hulu.
Oh, I saw the thumbnail for that. How was it?
From like the 90s?
No. That show I used to watch too. That was like a cartoon, like an animation. Yeah.
What was that show?
That was like people
Like people were living inside the computer.
Yeah, they were like computer parts, I guess.
And they were like 3D animations, like really chunky.
Wow, this doesn't ring a bell at all. And it was called Reboot?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Might have to look that up later.
But this one's got what's her name? Rachel Bloom from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I've been watching that show.
Oh, so now I know why you got it.
There's a link. I was like, and it's got Michael Keegan Key. I think that's his name.
Oh,
from Key and Peele.
Keegan Michael Key.
Keegan Michael Key. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's got what's his name from Jackass?
Johnny Knoxville.
Johnny Knoxville. Yeah. I think those are the only people. Oh, it's also got Paul Reiser, and yeah, like I said, Rachel Bloom.
Does it also have God, what's her name? Judy something?
Oh yeah, Judy Greer.
Yes.
I forgot her name.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got her. She's always looking good, man. She's always been a beautiful lady.
I agree.
Yeah. Even like she's probably like 50 something.
She's like one of those character actors that's in like a shitload of stuff.
Yeah, she really is.
She pops up in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, she gets a lot of work. Yeah. Good for her.
But how you like that show?
So far, I started out slow.
Oh, okay.
The jokes really aren't hitting hard. I hope it picks up. Maybe it's just like they're setting up the show right now. So
if I'm not mistaken, like the premise is like there used to be like a hit show, and now like these are actors that are coming back in a reboot of that show.
Yeah, there was a hit show. It was like a sitcom, and it was kind of like a goofy, silly '90s sitcom. And the actors, they came back to do the show, but they've been told that it's going to be different this time, more like edgy and a lot better.
It's like that drama they made out of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes, yeah. And the new show writer is supposed to be Rachel Bloom, and the old show writer was Paul Reiser. And there's beef because he comes back and he's like, "Hey, that's my show." And
man, Paul Reiser's been in a lot of shit recently.
Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, The Boys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
he's been doing like somewhat substantial, like supporting characters.
Yeah.
Do you think he was just saying no to work this whole time? He just decided to get back into
I'm sure he had enough money he didn't have to work.
Yeah, you never know if it's one of those things where like sometimes people drop out a long time, and sometimes it's just because they like want to raise their kids or whatever. And sometimes I think they like their career just goes downhill, or maybe they do other stuff and then they come back to it. I don't know.
Yeah, hard to say. But it seems like one of those things that's hard to walk away from because a career in acting is so like fragile. You could go downhill any second. One bad movie.
It is, but at the same time, like if you were one of those lucky guys that just was on like a hit show like the Big Bang Theory or something, and you made your millions, I could totally see just being like, okay, peace out. I'm gonna go live on an island somewhere.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the people who get on like those shows like that and they're like, hey, I got like a bit part in like something that's probably going to last one season.
Right. And then it explodes.
Yeah, and the residuals, like those guys are set for life. Unless, I know streaming is different. I'm not sure if they get residuals from streaming or not.
I think that's what one of those writer strikes was about. So like, I think they do, but it's probably like a pittance.
Okay.
Who knows? Anything else you watch?
That's pretty much it for me.
And what about you?
I don't know if we mentioned it last week. I finished season of Severance on the cliffhanger. I think we did.
Oh, yeah, we did talk about that.
What else? Did I watch anything this week? I watched something.
Did you finish Edge Runners, Cyberpunk?
No, I've watched a couple more of those. I haven't finished it out. I watched some American Pickers again.
Yeah.
I watched one more Lord of the Ring.
Oh, okay. How's that?
It's okay. I'm not hooked.
It seems like
right.
the internet's like has a lukewarm reception of that show as well.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone's like, "Oh my God, you got to see this."
But I don't know. I might keep going with it, but I mean, how many? I don't know. I don't know how far they're planning on going with it, and I don't know if I want to get invested.
Have you started Andor yet?
No, I wasn't sure if you were gonna dip out before it finishes, so I was like, maybe I'll just put that one on hold because I wasn't like.
I mean, now that I've started, I think I'll probably stay with my
Right.
Disney plan long enough to finish it. But well, I might as well go into what I've been watching because that's one of them. Yeah, so I've been watching Andor. So I watched the most recent episode just last night, which was episode 4. And I got to say, like, I am liking it quite a bit. I think this is like a definitely a more complex, like, Star Wars story. Like, I kind of wonder, like, I don't think kids would like this one as much because it's a little more nuanced. It's a little more, like this last episode especially, like, wasn't as heavy on action. It was more of like, introducing a lot of characters and like the different factions at play and a lot of dialogue. But like, I'm digging it, man. It's definitely has a different feel, I think, than a lot of Star Wars stuff, and I'm enjoying it. Let's see. I also went to the theater on Sunday and I watched a little movie called See How They Run, which is like an Agatha Christie type like murder mystery because I like those kind of things. Agatha. It actually kind of has like a meta angle to it because like the murder takes place around like a Agatha Christie stage play called The Mousetrap, which I think is like a real stage play. But then like I'll say this, like the actual like reveal at the end, like isn't the like strongest part of the film. Like to me, like the best whodunit is the one where like, the clues are actually laid out in a clever way. And if you like pay attention, like maybe you can solve it. Or like, even if you don't, you're like, oh fuck, the clues were really there. This one, like the clues were like kind of so subtle and like, once the reveal happened, I was like, "Oh, I didn't necessarily guess it, but I don't know if I would have."
I used to feel that like I've read a couple Sherlock Holmes, and I felt like that, whereas like he solves it and he's like, "Oh yeah, this was you can tell by the needle or the thread or something." You're like, what?
But this,
What's going on?
I will say, like Saoirse Ronan's character were very charming, and like her interactions with Sam Rockwell's detective character are a lot of fun. So it's really more like the journey's better than the destination.
Was the real reveal at the end Sam Rockwell's ass?
Well, I don't want to
Big
spoil it.
reveal.
I don't want to spoil.
Big hairy reveal.
But it's a good movie. I wouldn't say you have to run it right out to the theater and watch it, but when it hits streaming, like I would definitely recommend checking it out. It was fun. It's just like the whodunit aspect of it was kind of underwhelming, but the rest of it was pretty good.
I usually like him, although he's not usually in the biggest of roles.
Sam Rockwell, he's like always really good in everything he does. I remember like when they were casting the Joker for The Dark Knight, and they hadn't like announced
he was in
Heath
there?
Ledger yet. Well, I remember reading a story. I don't know because I don't know if like he was one of the names the studio was actually considering, or if he just like put his name out there as like he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But there was definitely that story, and like I think he would have been a great Joker.
Like if I was casting and I heard those two names together, I would have went with him.
Me too.
But
I mean, Heath Ledger
was amazing.
ended up being amazing.
Yeah. But
yeah, if I couldn't see either of them audition and they were like, you got to pick Heath Ledger or Sam Rockwell, I would have picked Rockwell at that time.
Man, I couldn't. When Heath Ledger was announced as Joker, I was like, no way.
Yeah, a lot of people were.
I mean, he was like such a happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
And charming. Like you don't really see it coming.
Like he doesn't. He's just a good-looking, normal guy, Like,
Right.
He's not the Joker, but man.
But yeah, he's the definitive Joker.
Yeah.
And then I've also been talking about how I've been kind of going back and reading a lot of comics lately, and I've kind of been going back and reading like some series that I've already read but enjoyed. I hadn't done that in a long time. I reread a series from probably the late aughts, early like teens called GI Joe Cobra, which is basically like, what if GI Joe Cobra was written for adults? Like, it's like, what if it was like dark and fucked up, and like kind of like the HBO version of GI Joe, and it's really fucking good. Very noirish. Like, I highly recommend it to people. It's really good.
That's a book, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm surprised when I go back and read something like how much I've forgotten, but also like as I'm reading it, how I do remember it at the same
Like
time.
bits and pieces of it. Yeah.
Man, I don't think I'm gonna bother to pick up the rest of the Game of Thrones series for books. I couldn't possibly read them.
I could read it.
You can remember that stuff?
Well, I don't remember so many of the details, and like I'm at the point where like he says the story goes off the rails anyway, and he's going to write it differently. So I'm like, I might as well just read it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Plus, I know it's going to be a page turner.
Yeah.
So,
But man, like if he had just stuck with it, and like if any, I don't know if it's possible to even like tie up all those loose ends, those threads, but I mean, there was so much potential there. I still wonder who that lady at the beginning of the story is, who like warns Daenerys. Like,
maybe when we're like 90, they'll remake it.
yeah, they'll tie it all up.
Man, like I read so many comics, and you know, I don't really read single issues so much. I usually read like the collections, but like even reading them that way, like, you know, a year and a half, 2 years will go by until like another collection comes out, and I'll be like, man, I remember like the broad strokes of what happened in the last one, but like my memory just like isn't as good these days.
Even the names will be like, because there's so many characters.
So many.
I'm gonna be like, who is this person?
I mean, think about how many more stories we consumed than like our parents did.
Oh my God.
Like they had 3 channels on television. Like maybe they read books, maybe they didn't. But like, there's just like so much. We consume so many stories with so many characters. It's like so much for our brains to keep track of.
I mean,
When you got Mash and Gilligan, what else do you need?
I know.
I mean, that is definitely contributing to ADHD, because like even for me as an adult, I'm like, I barely have any memory. I just look at my phone. I'm like a goldfish. I'm like, okay, I just look it up. You know, I don't store anything in my brain anymore.
I definitely feel like I have ADD sometimes, and I don't even know if I like clinically do, but I definitely feel like I do sometimes.
Do you remember how many like phone numbers and birthdays Mom used to remember?
I know. Well, even like when we were kids, we had to at least remember a couple phone numbers, like our own and maybe some relatives, you know. Yeah, I couldn't tell you what your fucking phone number is. I barely remember my own.
Yeah, I do forget mine sometimes. They'll be like, what's your number? I'll be like, hold on.
Yeah, you start looking at your phone, you're like, where in the fuck did they hide my phone number?
It's always the hardest one to find.